Good morning and happy Monday to you all. This is James Himm Mitchell, and I am about to conduct this week's Oracle Outlook video reading. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for taking time to explore content on my channel. And if you are a returning viewer and visitor, welcome back. I appreciate your support of the work that is done here on the channel. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. This week, because of it being Valentine's Day, or at least Valentine's Day falling in the week, I'm going to be working with one of the decks that I have made, one of my personal decks, with the idea that I'm working with decks that I love. And this is one of my personal favorites. And so I am working with the Mitchell Tarot playing cards. It is a variation on the deck that I worked with last week, which was the Mitchell Playing Card Tarot. So there's a slight change or nuance with the wording on both of those cards. If you were here last week, then you would remember that the deck I use is a combination of the Major Arcana from Tarot and the Minor Arcana. It's just a straight up playing card deck because that was what I was led and guided to work with way back in the day when I became an official Cartomancer. And so the difference between this week's deck and last week's deck is that the playing card part of the deck is scenic, which means that I have created images for each of the cards. So it's like a fully illustrated or scenic deck. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and shuffle the cards. And as I do for these weekly general readings, my intention is to always ask for the information, any guidance or advice that's going to be most helpful in how we progress throughout the week as the week unfolds. Feeling one more time will be good. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and cut the cards. Now I'm going to fan them out. And I'm looking at the fan for 5 cards that are getting my attention because I am working with lines of 5 for these readings as of late. See one way over here, another over here. And see the 5th and final card here. Okay, so these are the 5 cards down here at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to go ahead and take the remainder of the deck up and I'm going to move it to one side. Line the cards up in the way that they were selected. So we have 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Alright. So when I'm working with my playing card tarot decks, I have positional meanings for each of the cards. So the first one is what's called the origin card. It can be about a situation that may be unfolding as the week progresses, or it's going to suggest why am I asking the question that I'm asking. So let's turn the card over, and here we have a card that showed up last week. So we have the Empress once again. So it is a major arcana card. So for me, majors, when they turn up, carry more weight in the reading. So here, a major might suggest an important issue or event that's going to be the jumping off point for the week. Now, last week when it turned up in the expectations position, which is this card here. Here, it might say, again, this idea about managing our expectations, because I explained last week that in more traditional imagery, this card is depicted as a woman who is pregnant. And that is, for me, a visual pun for expecting and our expectations. So for me, this card may be about managing our expectations. I also said last week that for women in particular, this card can turn up as a card of caretaking and nurturing. So that may be a huge part of a situation that unfolds. But for those people that resonated with that, to kind of elevate their status, meaning like don't neglect their own self-care. Women, generally speaking, spend a lot of time and energy caring for other people at the expense of themselves. So that message may be repeated here, and it's shifting from the expectations position to the origin, which means that it's asking for more prominence if that message resonates with those of you who are watching. Now, the other thing here, it could be that there may be a situation that is going to involve a woman of authority. Again, going with the traditional imagery of a woman on the card, this card might suggest a woman who holds a position of authority. So that could be an unfolding situation with one's mother or mothers. It could be somebody who is like a mother or maternal type figure, or some other scenario where there is a woman who is holding a position of authority. Now, the last thing I will say about this card can also be about creativity. So there may be something going on where people are in a literal process or stages of creating an actual thing, or that this could just be from a more spiritual standpoint or a more metaphysical standpoint, talking about the ability that we all have, each and every one of us, to create. And so we create with our thoughts, we create with our words, we also create with our actions. So this should just be highlighting the idea that we are all creative beings. And then I will go to the image that I have created for the card, which is a cornucopia of fruit. So that also for me can mean that something is unfolding that is going to look like it is bearing fruit. I go with the idea of, the idea about being fruitful and being fruitful and multiplying, yeah? So that just suggests increase and abundance. So that's what I would see with this card. Now, of course, I may come back to this card if other cards dictate that, but that's what I'm seeing with this one card at the moment. Okay, so now, as I said, this card represents our expectations, and so here we have the Tower. So the Tower, and again, another major arcana card. So the Tower can represent disruption. It could represent shocks, surprises. It could represent fallout. So there may be something involving a woman or a person in authority that may be shocking, surprising, or have some sort of fallout, or that based on what's being created or manifested, yeah, the Empress, that there may be some shock, some surprise, some disruption, some chaos, that kind of thing. This card for me represents things out of the blue, something happening suddenly without warning, all those kinds of things. In a more positive note, the lightning struck tower card can suggest flashes of insight, going with the idea that the lightning is coming down. So flashes of insight, sudden clarity, revelations, those kinds of things. Yeah, so I'm seeing that. So this card would suggest, like, based on what is unfolding, the origin, right, that there may be a sense of shock, surprise, or that a sense of disruption or chaos. And that, again, this is in the position of expectation. So on some level, it's saying, like, this is to be expected based on whatever the situation is. It's like, almost like, for me, it would say, like, oh, I was expecting that, so it doesn't come as a shock or surprise, right? That kind of thing. But there may be the potential for some kind of fallout. Now, there may be a situation that is involving a woman, and then with the lightning struck tower, it could also represent fallout. It could represent division, separation, a split, something collapsing, metaphorically, something breaking down. So there may be a situation that involves a woman that feels like a breakdown, a separation, some kind of fallout, that kind of thing. So it could be like a separation, split, divorce, that kind of thing. Okay, so, but with this week, there may be some major events taking place, some important issues, unfolding. Also, too, with major arcana cards, they talk about lessons to be learned through those experiences, and sometimes the lesson comes through the situations that are disruptive, that are dramatic, that kind of wake you up and kick you in the seat of your pants. That's all the Tower, right? So that's what I would say with these two cards. All right, so now we're moving into the position of the focus, heart of the matter, central issue, or a hidden influence. And here we have, okay, so here we have the Five of Spades. First thing I will say is that with the Tower and this card, it can suggest that there's going to be some sort of split, separation, division, because this card for me can represent a split, separation, or divorce. So that is repeated in the imagery, excuse me. So I'm seeing that. Now we also have a spade as the suit. So the spade suit in playing card cartomancy for me can represent problems, challenges, blocks, and obstacles, right? And then the five would be, and along with the image, how are we going to handle those? The five can represent being hands-on because there are five fingers on the hand. And again, going back to the image, I chose a hand in the image. So there is that. Now, in a more positive sense, there may be something, if we're talking about creating something, then this card is about sharpening one's skill set, which is a nod to the scalpel in the image. There's also, too, with this card, a caution about handling sharp objects, right? So there is that. But this card can be about sharpening your skill set, doing something with a sense I want to be more precise with it. I want to become more accurate with it as well. So it could also be about a change in mind. So there may be, as a result of some sort of shock, surprise, disruption, someone has a change of mind. The five is also a number of change, right? Because it may suggest that a change of mind comes after experiencing some kind of pain, right? Or there's people are actively working on some cuts. I said that when the Six of Spades appeared in this position last week, and I talked about some sort of financial cuts, but this card could also be about like there's some activity, five in the hand, regarding some cuts, scalpel, right? And it's almost like people being really surgical, and that could be like strategic. But it could be like wanting to cut something away, remove something that may be considered a block or an obstacle, but to cut it away, that kind of thing. But that's what I'm seeing with the Five of Spades. Again, this would be about actively cutting something out, because the suit of spades can represent elimination, right, or removal, but also to a change of mind, but it may come as a result of some pain. Now, the other thing I will say, and this is just how I'm getting it, that pain may have been self-inflicted, which means that person made their mind up, took a course of action, and in the end, they're the ones who suffered for it, right? So that's how I would look at that and language that. Okay, so next we have guidance or advice. And here we have the Knight of Spades. Now, in my deck, since there are no knights in the playing card deck, I made cards to represent each of the knights. So we have two spades again. So a spade with another spade following it could represent an ongoing issue, problem, challenge. Now, the knight would be somebody who is looking into taking on the challenge, because he's all armored up and he's got his shield and his sword up. So this could be like going into quote unquote battle or needing to defend one's position. But the knights are also about service. So these could be people who are service oriented, right? So this card can suggest things like law enforcement or military, things of that nature. It could also be a card for me that represents some either legal investigation or the need to get a lawyer involved. Now, I'm not a legal professional, so I have to put that out as a disclaimer. But for me, this card can turn up when there is some investigation taking place, or it may have to do with investigator as a person, right? Or that there is some sort of legal course of action that is about to unfold, right? Because again, with the idea that this can represent investigation and seeking a lawyer. Now, the only other thing that I'm seeing, and it comes as a result, of this card, is that sometimes this card can suggest making a hasty or sudden exit. So it could be, and that would make sense with the Tower card. Again, if this card can represent a fallout, separation. With this card, I'm getting the sense that this can represent like somebody falling from the top, or a fall from grace, or something of that nature, right? It could also be like somebody being evicted from a particular position. So now coming back to this card, it could be a woman in authority, or it's about something that is being created that will allow a person to be removed from a certain position. Right. So that's what I'm seeing with this card. But it could also be too like there is the thought spades, or the idea spades, about facing some kind of challenge as a means of protection. Right? So now, going back to this most mundane scenario here, this could be a woman who's going through a divorce or divorce proceedings, and is being very strategic, either with an investigator or her legal counsel, right? In terms of like defending her position in the breakdown of the marriage or the relationship. That's what I'm seeing here. Or it could be the converse, like there's a woman who's being charged with something regarding her own situation or marriage. And I am back. I had to turn my ringer off on my phone. You know, I had the thought of doing it before I sat down to do the reading. And then I thought, oh no, no one's going to call me. And as you would guess, someone would call me. So there are no mistakes that happen in a reading. And so what I was saying when the phone rang could be something that was significant because the phone rang at that particular moment. So I'm just going to go with that as a thing. And so now we're going to now move on to the last card. And so this is in the position of the outcome or the result. And so here we have the world. What I said about a hasty or sudden exit with this card is emphasized again or repeated with the world, because the world can also represent the completion of a cycle or an exit being made. Now, take a look at the line. There are 3 major arcana cards, so there is something significant that could potentially be unfolding this week. Now, it could also be too, if I mirror the cards, meaning the Empress and the World, the first thing that I notice is that both are 3 cards. Here, the Empress is the number 3, and then the World is 21, which reduces to 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. So we have the number 3 being repeated. So the 3 as a number can represent things like creative self-expression, one of the things I highlighted with the Empress. It can also represent results because it is the combination of the first masculine number, 1, and the first feminine number, 2. And then they add to 3, and 3 is the product or the result of that coupling or that pairing or that union. Yeah. So there may be something about results with this number 3 as well. The 3 in playing card cartomancy can represent growth and development or increase and expansion. So there may be something that is expanding, meaning like taking on more energy, or there's something that's being built up. But what I was going to say with the mirroring aspect is that the Empress and the World could represent a world, something that affects the world. So this could be something global, something universal, that kind of thing. And then with the Empress, this could be a political figure or a person who's in a position of authority, but in another part of the world. Now, I'm in the U.S., so I'm using that as a frame of reference. So this might be, for me, as I'm reading this, somebody in another part of the world, right? So there's that. But this could also represent something foreign, right? With the Knight of Spades being about military or law enforcement, this may be something involving military in another part of the world, or law enforcement in another part of the world, or maybe some aspect of justice in another part of the world, that kind of thing. But it could also be whatever is being planned on, or what is the endeavor that's unfolding here. The world could suggest in a positive light that it's going to be successfully completed, right? But now, if we go with the idea that the major arcana cards are offering a lesson to be learned, then the world would suggest a higher level of awareness. Yeah. Now, the other thing I will suggest is that the world can also represent, if I go with the idea that somebody's being evicted, quote unquote, from a position of authority, let's just say, then the world is about career, and in that regard, it could be about retirement or somebody moving on to the next stage or phase in their life. This card can highlight things like graduation, retirement, things like that. So it could suggest that somebody's moving on to the next stage or phase, either in their career or even leaving their career if they've been involved in it for a long time. But that's what I would see with the World card. Again, that represents a successful completion of a cycle. It can represent a higher level of awareness, but it could also just represent moving on. Now, it could also be that someone is considering maybe leaving their country of origin or the country that they have been living in for some time for another part of the world, because this card can represent travel and being in another part of the world. And that could also make sense with the lightning struck tower. That could be something that happens suddenly, unexpectedly, that kind of thing. Now, I will say I'm not a real estate agent, but if that resonates with you and you're feeling like you're moving on, either to a place where there's a greater sense of distance or another part of the world, then when I get this card around real estate or property, there may be issues either with electricity or the electrical stuff within the house. That would be the lightning. Something having to do with the roof. That would be the top of the tower. And then usually something having to do with plumbing. That's all the water in the card. Or something having to do with the foundation of the house. So those would be the things that you would want to further investigate if you are house hunting or looking at homes and property. Knight of Spades, then you'd want to explore those things or look at those things chiefly. Again, that would be the wiring, the roof, plumbing, and the foundation. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you if you have made it through the video up to this point. Thank you for giving me the gift of your time. I do appreciate it. I'm James Himm Mitchell. I am signing off, and I will be holding space here for you all as we explore the week and then come back to this space again for the next Oracle Outlook video reading. So until then, take care, be well, have a great day, and have a great week.